Welcome to Military Matters, hosted by retired Major Ricky Harold and Lieutenant Colonel George Fleck. This is a show about, for, and everything regarding veterans. We're all about the issues impacting the lives of our military brothers and sisters, and our mission is to always be insightful, factual, and thought-provoking. 1000.
Hey, welcome to Military Matters. This is Ricky Harold. We have a great guest today. We have Captain William Munns, and he is the Deputy Commander for Reno Composite Squadron for the Civil Air Patrol. And we welcome to our show, and we want to say thank you for being with us, and we appreciate all you do for the state of Nevada and helping here in the greater Reno metro. So without further ado, can you let our listeners know what you do and how you do it?
Good afternoon. It's Sandy, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries. We are the all-volunteer auxiliary of the United States Air Force called the Civil Air Patrol. There's four major parts to the Air Force. There's active duty, the reserves, the Air National Guard, and the Civil Air Patrol. And we actually outdate the Air Force. We were created in 1941. The Air Force wasn't created until 1948.
48. The Defense Act.
Yes. So we were nationally chartered under Title 10, and then our duties and responsibilities were created under Title 36. We have four major missions that the Civil Air Patrol does: emergency services, which primarily includes search and rescue and disaster support and relief. We also do aerospace education, and we do the cadet program. And those are our three main primary missions that we perform with the Civil Air Patrol. The reason that I'm here today is to promote one of our more important activations or missions that we are doing is the Operation Pulse Lift Blood Drive. The southern half of the state of Nevada Civil Air Patrol squadrons are working along with Creech Air Force Base and Nellis Air Force Base doing a blood drive down there. And I'm working to get with the Air National Guard here in Reno to also join us. But ours is coming up on April 12th on Sunday at our headquarters at 2890 Vassar Street in Reno.
So you work a lot with the Red Cross then?
Yes, we do. In fact, I assisted them with their blood drive that they just did. Just worked with them 2 weeks ago when they did their blood drive, and now ours is coming up, and we're hoping to get a good turnout because right now the Civil Air Patrol has activated the Operation Pulse Lift twice as a mass operation. We have a normal operation of that going, but right now our first call-up was during 9/11. Or excuse me, not 9/11, but during COVID, and we had to do blood donations and things to support that. The second call-up is ongoing right now for Operation, what's it called?
Epic Fury?
Epic Fury, I'm sorry, I forgot that. But we are looking at an increased need for blood donations and are actively recruiting anyone and everyone who is eligible to come donate blood.
Okay.
And support the community.
Well, that's very important. According to Bridget, she was saying that one of the problems is that they've had a real impact on low availability on plasma in the state of Nevada. I don't know about the other states, but she was talking about just here and on our show when we had her here just last week. And it was quite illuminating. I mean, she was very, very positive about what's going on with the Red Cross, but she identified areas that need some serious acknowledgement as well as participation from the local community.
That is correct. And what's really nice is that the Civil Air Patrol has a national agreement with the American Red Cross as partners in our emergency services. We do one element of disaster response, and they do a different element. But we are partners at the national level for our component of the disaster response and recovery as part of our emergency services.
Do you guys work with the Veterans Resource Center at all? Because they do some of that stuff as well.
Not currently. We are always looking for new members and partnerships with other organizations that have a similar mission to what we do and are more than willing to establish working relationships with these other organizations and people.
How about the Knights of Columbus?
No, not that I know of.
Because I've been a member for many years, and I know that we also do blood drives in association with the National Red Cross, but we could also do that in association with you guys as well. I'm sure we could do an MOU, memorandum of understanding, to assist in your programs. You know, that's one of the things that the Knights do here. It's a religious organization, a men's religious organization, Catholic, and it's there to do nothing but charitable work and support the local community.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we've been around.
Well, we aren't the ones that are the
years.
primary. We're not the ones that are the primary drivers of blood
drive.
services.
Yeah.
It's primarily here in this area, Vitalant Blood Services, and we work in conjunction with them, and so does the Red Cross. So it's kind of a three-way partnership that we're all working together to manage these blood drives. So we're going to become more active as the Civil Air Patrol under our national label of Operation Pulse Lift, but it's the blood mobile from Vitalant that will be coming to our headquarters and doing the actual blood draws, and we will be hosting the facility and the people who come in.
Volunteer staff to assist with the administration.
Correct. And I'm also assuming that numerous of our members are going to be the ones that are donating. And I'm trying to hustle as many of our National Guard members as I can get over there as well. But we're putting the word out to the general population, Vitalant and the Red Cross, and we are looking for donors. And so that's one of the reasons that we wanted to participate and contribute. And as a local squadron, we have taken on this mission of doing the blood drive.
Yeah, I don't mind assisting and administrating, but I'm not sticking anybody.
No, we don't do the sticks. That is strictly the folks from Vitalant. They do a fabulous job. I donate roughly every 7 to 8 weeks.
Oh, wow.
I've donated over 32 times now over the last many years, and it's not a big deal. It's easy to do, and they're very good at what they do.
Unfortunately,
and the best part is they give you treats afterward.
Unfortunately, I can't donate blood because I was in the United Kingdom. I was attached to the 20th Attack Fighter Wing there at RAF Upper Hayford during the period from 1978 to 1981, and that's when the mad cow disease was prevalent in the state of the United Kingdom, and because of that, nobody that lived there during that period and were meat eaters are allowed to ever give blood. Just because of the contaminated meat. That doesn't mean you have it. It just means that you were exposed during that period of time, so you're not allowed to give blood.
Well, there are certain criteria that they have to screen whenever they do a blood donation, and they have you do a complete questionnaire. It's very confidential.
I never get past the first page.
Yeah, what they look at, have you been out of the country? What are your sexual habits? What kind of medications are you on, and things like that. And there's a screening process. And there are some people that sadly are not eligible or capable of being able to donate no matter how much they want to. And then there are some people with just general health conditions that it's probably better that they don't do it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If you have heart conditions or you have blood-borne diseases or something like that, obviously it would exclude you from being a participant. Yeah. Doesn't mean you can't administratively help, though.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things we always look for. Vitalant in particular is always looking for financial donors, as is the Red Cross, and so are we at the Civil Air Patrol. Being an all-volunteer organization, the Civil Air Patrol does get some funding for some of our operations. Our emergency services, for example, search and rescue, disaster recovery, and certain other activities are Air Force funded. And, they own our aircraft. We have over 500 aircraft. We have the largest Air Force of single-engine piston aircraft in the world. We have over 500 light aircraft in the Civil Air Patrol and over 1,000 vehicles. So we're able to transport medical supplies, blood, organs, things like that. And we do a lot of search and rescue, not as much as we used to because of new technology and personal locator beacons and things. But we do a lot of disaster recovery, aerial photography, radio networking. We even have one repeater we can stick in one of our aircraft called the Highbird, and it circles and acts as a radio repeater for communications when regular communications are down post-incident.
Well, one of the big things for Civil Air Patrol is search and rescue, and also assisting in fire retardation as well, right?
Negative. We do not do any firefighting.
Well, I didn't mean firefighting, but I mean in assisting the firefighters. Don't you guys do some work?
That is not primarily what we do, no.
Oh, okay.
I spent 46 years in the fire service, and I've done my fair share with National Incident Management teams on wildland fires. It's been a lot of fun. But the Civil Air Patrol does not actively get involved. One of the things that we are capable of doing is post-wildland fire if needed for, well, that's a disaster like anything else. After the fire, we have the potential for going out and doing post-burn assessments by aerial photography and mapping work. And so we have a complete branch of GIS folks at the national level. Our aircraft can go out to aerial photography. We upload it to a national website. They do the analysis and then can assist local and federal agencies in doing disaster recovery.
So who actually does fire suppression, aerial fire suppression during a fire?
Forest Service, BLM here in the state of Nevada, depending on jurisdiction, it could be the Nevada Division of Forestry, local fire department, although most local departments are, if you have anything of any size, is quickly overwhelmed. So what they do is they activate incident management teams and they bring in resources from outside, and we'll get strike teams and task forces of firefighters, engines, dozers, helicopters, air tankers, all the different resources. They come here and they get a delegation of authority from the local jurisdiction. And that allows us to go back to doing our normal routine of protecting the local community while this larger incident is going on. It's been handed off to the pros from Dover, so to speak. And the incident management team takes it over. Ultimately, the local entity is responsible for the final costs, but the incident is managed by the incident management teams. Most wildland fires are burning on federal lands. Forest Service, BLM, national parks, those kinds of agencies are the ones that primarily fight those fires. But they do also, through a lot of interlocal agreements, support local entities. Well, I spent my career with Truckee Meadows Fire and City of Reno Fire, and we've gotten a lot of help over the years from those federal and state agencies.
Well, once the governors of the states ask for federal assistance, and FEMA comes in and they run the show, don't they?
That is correct. I was also the City of Reno's emergency manager for several years. And one of the things that we do is we look at, are we capable of dealing with a disaster at the local level? If we are not, then we create a disaster declaration and we send it to the State Office of Emergency Management. The chief at OEM looks at it and says, we can handle it at the state level and we'll provide funding. And then we manage it still locally, but with statewide assistance. If it goes beyond state capabilities, then we send it up to FEMA and we can get a presidential disaster declaration and get federal funding for recovery and management of the incident during that occurrence. I've personally been in California, Idaho, and Nevada alone. Over the years, I've been on 7 presidential disaster declarations, including 3 floods and severe winter storms here and forest fires in California and Idaho. So the federal system is in support of, but we still manage it locally. Now, how does the Civil Air Patrol come into that? C.A.P. is just another agency that FEMA or a state agency, a local agency can request us to come in and assist. If they get an approval from the feds, the Air Force will pay for the whole thing. We'll go up and we'll put aircraft in the air. We'll do aerial photography. We'll do activities that support the disaster recovery, radios, repeaters, aerial photography, some transport of personnel and dignitaries. We don't do much of that, but we are capable of doing it. So the Civil Air Patrol has a very focused function, just like certain other agencies have a very specific focus.
So if FEMA makes a request for the Civil Air Patrol, then the funding actually comes out of the Department of Defense.
That's correct.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they make that approval. There will be times where a state or a local agency will make a request for a service from the Civil Air Patrol. And if the Air Force it's not within their focus or their purview of services, then they will deny the request and it won't be federally funded. But a local agency can still make a request for the Civil Air Patrol to come do certain activities in support of what they need. And we're dirt cheap. As I was mentioning previously to this conversation here, a C-130 doing aerial photography and work like that is $30,000 an hour. You put an F-16 up there doing aerial photography and you're talking, $5,000 an hour. You look at a Black Hawk and you're talking $3,000 an hour. You put up a Civil Air Patrol aircraft with a crew of 3 doing aerial photography, radio work, whatever, or $175 an hour. All you're paying for is the airplane and a little bit of maintenance cost in the fuel. And you get a trained crew that can go out there and do actions and activities that support your operation. If you need ground transport or ground work. We have vans and pickup trucks that we can transport people, transport supplies. During the COVID pandemic, we transported to the rural areas of Nevada. We transported boxes and boxes of masks and gloves and decontamination equipment and supplies to rural parts of the state for almost a couple of years.
Is the Civil Air Patrol now getting involved in drones at all?
Yes, they are. What's another one of the aspects? We're not as active with our drone program within the city of Reno. They're using them more down in Las Vegas, but we would love to get some more people that are drone operators and start expanding our drone capabilities. So we have the ability to put people out on the ground, but they can't get right up close to, say, a bridge that's been washed out. We can put an aircraft in the air. We can go low and slow, that is, we can't, and take aerial photography and survey and assess damage post-incident. But to get a really good close-up look, we want to put UAVs out and be able to do aerial photography and survey and recon work to also enhance our capabilities for disaster recovery.
Well, drones can be anywhere from the size of a small package to the size of a F-16 jet. I mean, that's the range and size, and of course, whatever aerial platform you want to put on your aircraft. I mean,
Absolutely,
it can be adjustable, and you can do infrared or all kinds of different aspects.
I did some private consulting work with a local company here in Reno that did aerial photography in various wavelengths. They do infrared, they do visible light, and other types of survey work.
Radar.
Or looking at LIDAR, actually, and they look at fuels and then do consulting work to the Forest Service or the BLM or one of the local fire agencies. And as a fire behavior analyst, former fire behavior analyst, I did some work with them, and he's got a drone the size of a Volkswagen that does some sophisticated work.
Yeah, I mean, the force multiplier in that is amazing, isn't it?
Yes, and then, of course, we have all the way up to the size of, I had the privilege of standing next to and seeing the Predator drones down at Creech Air Force Base.
They're big.
Fall. They really are. I was shocked. I mean, turbine engine, propeller-driven turbine engine rather than a piston engine, and they're pretty good size. They wouldn't let us take pictures of the camera systems. The rest of the aircraft we were allowed to take pictures of, and it was an amazing experience to get a tour of that airbase.
You get to see a Reaper?
I think they had one of those and a couple of Predators. They had a couple of different UAVs down there that we got to see while we were on the tour.
I find that the loiter capabilities of these drones amazing. Of course, you've got the pilots that are just sitting there in a cooled warehouse facility with basically it looks like a mock-up of a trainer that you're flying, you know, like a simulator, like a sim trainer. Basically, it looks much the same, except it's actual a live feed going into the bird. So it's pretty sophisticated stuff now.
And one of the things that we have done in the past, it's called green flag. We go down to Creech Air Base and out on the Nellis Range. They are flying these Predators, and ground crews, ground military personnel are learning how to work in conjunction with the UAVs and target things and that kind of stuff. What they do is they'll use a Civil Air Patrol aircraft also equipped with the camera equipment, and we pretend to be a drone. So we'll have a technician from the Air Force on board and a couple of Civil Air Patrol crew, and we'll go out and fly over various targets, and ground crews work the cameras that are mounted to our aircraft, and we simulate the drone for them because we're a lot cheaper to operate than a Predator or a Reaper or something like that.
Oh, sure, yeah. You're talking some capital money there, yeah.
So why not hire the local boys that can go a little bit slower and a little bit less cost or more cost effective to get the job done?
Well, you know, it's interesting because Sandy, tell us for our listeners a little bit about your personal history. You said to me offline that you were in
fire service
for many years, right?
Oh yeah, I started as a volunteer firefighter in the 70s in high school, and then I found out you could actually get paid to do this, and so I got on the fire department in 79 with the county. We merged into the city of Reno in 2000, and then we deconsolidated in 2012. I retired from full-time career in 2013. Hazmat, tech rescue, emergency medical services, structural firefighting, wildland firefighting. I got the chance to do it all. And while I was there, I worked on national incident management teams on forest fires in 9 western states. When I retired from Reno, during the winter, I ran the wildland fire training program and helped create a bachelor's in emergency management at Truckee Meadows Community College. And I did that for 11 years. Then in the summers, I would still go out as a casual hire with the BLM, working with the incident management teams on fires around the western U.S.
How did you find working with the BLM staff?
They're excellent. They're wonderful. The Forest Service, the BLM, Nevada Division of Forestry, Fish and Wildlife Service for the state, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, all these federal agencies kind of get a bad rap in some respects, but at least at the incident management team level, and having worked among them for so many years, I really miss it. Ended my fire service career 2 years ago. I figured 46 years was enough. But in the last 10 years, I still found something where I could still give back to the community and be committed and involved. And that's why I got involved with Civil Air Patrol. Actually, they recruited me. I'm a private pilot. I've been flying since I was, in high school, although there was a 28-year gap when I didn't. So I got back into flying about 14 years ago, just before I retired. And I was up at Stead flying kids for the Experimental Aircraft Association, the Young Eagles program. We take kids for introductory flights for free. In fact, I'm doing it on Saturday up at Stead. And the Civil Air Patrol was up there and said, well, why don't you come fly for us? And so I got involved just as a pilot for the Civil Air Patrol, and I get to fly their beautiful, wonderful airplanes. We have late model glass cockpit 182s, 206s, et cetera. I've gradually ended up getting involved with the C.A.P. more actively now, and my wife rolls her eyes and says, I thought you were retired. And now I'm the deputy commander. I am the Aerospace Education Officer, the safety officer for the squadron, the training and education officer, and I'm on the command track and may end up becoming the squadron commander in a year or so. So I'm having a lot of fun.
Getting paid a lot of money for this, right?
Oh, yeah. Every time I get one of those promotions, it doubles my pay. 2 times 0
is still zero.
But it's a wonderful organization. We have a lot of fun. We have some amazing members in the Civil Air Patrol that I have had the privilege to work with. Having never been outside of high school ROTC, as you and I were discussing, I never served in the military. We were right after Vietnam. They said, we don't need you. My brother went law enforcement for 35 years. I went fire service for 46. And the Civil Air Patrol allows me to still be committed in a military or paramilitary type organization and serve and give back in its own way. And we have a lot of former military members, officers, NCOs, some amazing folks that find that they can still give back as well. So this is a plug for recruiting here, and I thank you for allowing me to bring that part up. So anybody that's interested, feel free to check it out. We're right on the Google Maps. Look up Reno Composite Squadron Civil Air Patrol, and you'll find us. And we have meetings a couple of evenings a month, and we have, like I said, we have 3 primary missions. We have the search and rescue type thing, the emergency services, and there's other things besides just search and rescue and disaster recovery. We do drug interdiction, we do cadet orientation flights and other activities, so our aviation side of things is pretty active. But we also do aerospace education, where we do an internal program for both our senior members and for our cadets, but we have an external program for educators. We support schools, the scouting program, Girl Scouts, churches, any organization that wants to do any kind of aerospace education. We bring on what are called AE members, or aerospace education members, who can have free access to curriculum materials, books, what we call STEM kits. There's like 30 or 40 different STEM kits, and you get them for free. Model rocket program, a weather station, model airplanes, flight simulator, robots, computer programming stuff. And all of these different kits come for free once they sign up as an aerospace education member. And then we can actually send cadets or seniors to assist with classes and doing aerospace education activities with classrooms, etc. And a bonus to the teachers and other people involved is that we have what's called the TOP program, Teacher Orientation Program, and we take them for airplane rides. And a lot of the teachers like to do a broadcast from the aircraft while we're flying them back to their classroom, and the kids love it. They get a real kick out of that. And then the third thing that we do is, of course, the cadet program itself. And our cadet program, we currently have 49 cadets, and we focus on leadership, character development, physical fitness, and of course the aerospace education are the four main things that we focus with the cadets. But they get to go do high adventure. They just did winter survival a couple of weekends ago. We take them on orientation flights. We do field trips to the planetarium. We do other activities and keep them fairly well engaged. We had been pretty actively involved in we have an active cadet program while we are a military-based organization under the Air Force, and our cadets wear uniforms, they learn drill and things like that. It's surprising that only about 18% of cadets ever go on to military service. Most of them go into STEM-related careers, science, technology, engineering, and math, and we add aerospace to that. So we have a pretty strong aviation and aerospace component to what we share with our cadets. And we do monthly aerospace education classes, of which I do most of. I have an outstanding young man, one of our cadets, that's my assistant, and he is really sharp and a lot of fun to work with. And so we do monthly aerospace education classes on different topics. We did one on engines just last week. How does an internal combustion engine work? And I had plastic models that the cadets could work with and play with and learn how an engine worked. We've done very sophisticated aviation. We had paper airplane night. That was a lot of fun. We've done 3 months of astronomy. We've done the model rocket program. The cadets earned a badge for the rocketry program for meeting milestones. They can earn a badge for STEM activities, a minimum number of hours of STEM education, and a couple of other curricula. So we keep the cadets pretty busy, and they have a blast. So anybody from 12 years old up to 21 is the age range for our cadets. A lot of the cadets at 18 choose to go into the seniors or adult side of the Civil Air Patrol, and that's anyone 18 and above. There's no maximum age limit on the seniors. In fact, one of our very active members is a retired Air Force fighter pilot who then went on to the airlines and flew sevens before he retired. He is now 93 years old and still one of our maintenance officers and keeps track of all the aircraft in the Nevada wing. He is just an amazing guy and a lot of fun to work with. So we have 46 senior members. Unfortunately, only about 20 to 25 of them are pretty active. The rest of them are what we refer to as the ghost squadron. They still pay dues, but they don't show up at meetings, and they're not very actively involved with the squadron. But those who are involved, we stay pretty busy. We have a lot of fun. We go do a lot of search and rescue exercises once a month. We do other flight training for our air crews. We do ground team training. We do a lot of other activities for the seniors just as much as we do for the cadets. And then, of course, the support for the cadet program. So we have, all told, just almost 100 members in our squadron here in Reno, but we're looking for more.
Do you find that the state of Nevada and the Nevada state government is supportive of the C.A.P.?
Absolutely. It's in the Nevada Revised Statutes under the search and rescue title. We get some funding from the state of Nevada, and they provide us with support. The Office of Emergency Services literally has a representative from the Civil Air Patrol who works with them on a regular basis.
So there's a funding stream that comes through for the C.A.P. then?
Limited. We get some funding through the Air Force for the aerospace education for teachers and educators. We get some funding when it's an Air Force approved flight mission. We get some funding through the state of Nevada, but we also have to rely a lot on funding from generating donations and other charitable sources. We used to get a fair amount of our budget for the Reno squadron from the Reno air races. Unfortunately, they are no longer around here, and that was one of our major funding streams for the activities that we do in the Reno squadron. So we are now having to find alternative funding sources. We do wreaths across America, and we place wreaths on the graves of military service members. I was grateful to have the opportunity to put the one on my dad's this last fall at Christmas, and we get a small portion of the sales of those wreaths to support our squadron. And we did a fundraiser by selling the wreaths at Cabela's about a month before the Wreaths Across America event out at the Memorial in Fernley. And then we went out and laid the wreaths and supported the event at around Christmas time. It was really a pretty heartwarming activity. It was wonderful.
Yeah, I was there for Knights of Columbus. We also do that. Fourth degree is patriotism, and part of our charter is we always do Wreaths Across America wreaths that we give. The thing that we found out was that there's usually now more wreaths than there are grave sites. So,
yeah, that was pretty surprising. We actually had a pretty successful drive in selling the wreaths, and a couple of the grave sites, we actually had 2 and maybe even 3 of the wreaths laid in front of them. But I have a little crypt or whatever it's called for mom and dad's ashes, and I was able to place the wreath next to that.
the columbarium.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was really privileged to do that since my dad was a World War II vet. And I know he'd be pretty proud of me for being involved with the Civil Air Patrol right now.
I'm sure he is. I'm sure he's looking down at you right now.
I hope so.
I think we're all hopeful that someday we get to be part with them again as well. So.
Well, we all have our heroes. Some people have sports heroes and things like that. My hero was no more, but never made it past corporal. Was in World War II Europe and got a Bronze Star, 2 Purple Hearts, and 3 battle stars, including the Battle of the Bulge, the Ardennes. I'm proud of my dad, like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, we have one of our guests on our show here once or twice a year, and he was at the Battle of the Bulge too.
Wow.
He's still alive. He's 100 years old.
I would love to talk to that gentleman
Yeah,
sometime.
he had a real story. Guy's history is just amazing, and he's one of the vanishing few that's left.
Yep.
Out of the 12.5 million people, there's only a few 100,000 left, and they're going fast.
Unfortunately, it's really sad. And when you think about the history that's being lost, the stories and the history of, that was a world war.
Correct.
And when you think about the elements that were involved, and when you look at it from a firsthand experience from those people who were there, it's just mind-boggling. And finally, I have a half-sister that lives back east, and her daughters, my nieces, were doing a story about World War II, and they asked my dad to write up a story of his activities. He was in for duration in 6, tried to enlist at 16, and my granddad said, no, you're going to graduate high school first. So he ended up getting involved, enlisting the minute he graduated high school, and trained down south, and then took a ship over into Europe. Mm-hmm. He went across Omaha Beach 2 weeks after the invasion, and then he got to see Europe on the government dime and was there for the duration of the war and 6 months after.
Have you ever got a chance to go to Europe?
I have not. My wife has, but we weren't married then. I had always dreamed of going to Europe and seeing it through my dad's eyes, and I never got that opportunity before he started getting Alzheimer's and then finally passed at 80 years old.
Well, it would be, if you can swing it, you should take your wife and go back and see the monuments and the sites.
Oh, that would be an incredible experience that I would love to do. It's on our bucket list.
Well, I hope that you can do it while you still got your health.
Me too.
That's really kind of the thing that you want to do.
Yep.
I've been to all of those sites and I've really enjoyed it. So it's very memorable. To the point where it kind of chokes you up.
It would be fun.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about, your brother and you were both involved in support for, government services, right?
Well, yeah. As already said, I spent 46 years in the fire service. When we both graduated in the 70s, they said, we've got too many people we're getting rid of from Vietnam. Don't bother enlisting.
Right.
And I didn't even have to register. My brother did 2 years later, but we never.
What year did you graduate from high school?
Where?
What year?
76.
76.
And my brother was
Okay.
78. And so we never served, and both of us fully expected to, follow in our dad's footsteps. And
Well, they got rid of the conscription.
right. So I ended up in the fire service, and my brother went law enforcement. He did 25 years with the county sheriff's office and another 8.5 overseas, 5 in Afghanistan, 3.5 in Pakistan, first with the U.S. Department of Justice and then with the State Department as a police advisor. My great adventure, instead of going overseas, was to go to a burning forest fire in the Boise National Forest or something. I stayed a little closer to home.
That's what you call a big campfire.
Yeah, big. I've been on 300, 400,000 acre fires. The Dixie fire just a few years ago was 900,000. One a few years before that down in California along the Sierras by the Sequoias, ultimately was the state's largest, and I was on that. And then the August complex became the largest fire. I was on that. Another one of the presidential disaster declarations. So I've had the privilege of being on 7 different
So you were at
disasters.
the Modoc fire?
Not the Modoc. Are you talking about the one that burned all the way from Chico all the way over into Susanville and Mount Lassen?
Yeah.
That was the Dixie fire.
The
Yes,
Dixie
I
fire?
was on that one with the California Type 2 team.
And there was the one that was there at not Paradise. No, it's earlier than that. The one that was, I drive through it all the time when I'm going up on Lassen National Forest. I'm trying to think of, it's named after that little town right there. Have another senior moment here. Trying to think of the name.
Well, they've had numerous fires around.
That was
the
a really
Susanville
bad
area.
fire. I mean, that was
Yeah.
one that took out a lot of the old growth. This was in the, I think in the either the late 80s or early 90s or something. This fire I'm thinking of when it was, and unfortunately, you would have thought that the state of California and the BLM would have replanted.
There's a lot of places they have, but quite a few places they have not.
Well, this area along the Lassen National Forest off of Highway 189 going north to Shasta, that road, the fire that they had there down in right before you get to Modoc, that fire there in the Lassen National Forest, they never.
They do in some places, in other places they don't, and I honestly don't understand that side of the
I don't
Forest
either.
Service business. There's a lot of places they do, but there's also a lot of places where they do controlled burning, prescribed fires, because that decreases the fire risk. When you look at those fires that completely devastate the forest,
It's
we're
because
getting
of the
off
ground.
topic from the Civil Air Patrol here, but I might as well make my statement. This is actually what I did my master's thesis on, was management of fuels and how we could bring the public in to cooperate with them, with the government agencies to do fuels management and reduce fire risk in forests. There's 3 things over the last 100 years that have caused the problems. Number 1 is climate change. Climate change is making fire season longer and fires are burning hotter. Number 2 is the past 100 years of Smokey the Bear's 100% fire suppression policy. We don't let fires burn. Fire is a natural part of the ecosystem.
Right, it gets rid of the brush.
You got it. That understory of brush, the down dead material and everything else, that stuff's got to
Down
be
trees as
consumed
well,
by
yeah.
fires. And in some areas, it'll torch out and it'll open up the tree canopy, and that creates a meadow for forage for wildlife. So when it starts getting too densely grown, that overgrowth is actually very detrimental to the forest health. And then the third factor is us. Human population in the last 130 years has exploded. We used to be around 1 to 2 billion people on the planet. We're now over 7 billion people on this planet Earth. And our population in the United States was under 100 million. We're now over 340 million just in the U.S. And all those people don't live in the cities anymore. 50 years ago, when I first got in the fire service, you'd slick off 30, 40,000 acres of sagebrush in the middle of Nevada, and we'd stick a couple of BLM engines on it. And that was it. Nowadays, we have to go out there and protect all the homes and the houses and the ranches and everything else that have been built out in the rural areas because people want to get out of the cities. And now that we have to protect all that infrastructure and people, the firefighting has become far more complicated and a lot more expensive. Where we could have just run a couple engines, let it slick off, and it'll grow back. Growth of sagebrush, big Great Basin big sagebrush is 30 to 40 years. Pinyon pine is up to 100 years, and then it'll regrow. But now we're seeing an invasion of cheatgrass, which is creating a problem, and we're seeing a problem with people being in the middle of it all. So we now have to go out and fight rapidly spreading fires, and the burn cycle for cheatgrass is as little as 3 to 5 years compared to 30 to 40 for sagebrush. So we had, what was it, 4 years ago? The whole hillside behind Sparks burned off. And then 1 year later, right through the black, all the cheatgrass burned a second time, 1 year later in exactly the same place. So cheatgrass is a real problem in the Great Basin. But nationally, in the wildland fire picture, Smokey the Bear, human population growth, and climate change are making fighting forest fires a lot more difficult and a lot more expensive. And that's where we're running into problems. So going out and doing fuels management work and prescribed fires is one of the effective ways of being able to decrease the fire risk. And I'm sure you've seen the smoke going on down over off Mount Rose Highway in the last few weeks.
For sure.
They've gone in and they've cut off limbs, limbed up the trees, bone piled all of the logs and down dead material, scraped up all the brush, and then they do burn piles under controlled conditions, knowing what the weather's going to be and things like that. And then they consume those fuels in a very controlled fashion.
Well, I find it interesting because I've done a thesis on climate change and climate distortion. And one of the things that's, it seems to me self-evident, but obviously the academia today doesn't really do research anymore, unfortunately. But if you go back to look at climatology and you kind of look at the history of the climate just in North America, I'm not talking about Europe or Asia, in North America, if you look at it, the first time that any climate analysis of any type that was done, and of course that was back east, I mean, we're talking about New York State and Pennsylvania, was just a little over 120 years ago. So just at the turn of the 20th, the early 20th century, after John Muir and a couple of environmentalists started their program for federal parks like Yosemite and Yellowstone and those kind of things, where they actually took territory out of production and made it into parks, okay? Well, there's nothing wrong with that. But what you have to do is you have, like you're talking about, you have to have land management. You have to have forest management. You have to have meadow management. You have to have all kinds of, even fish, believe it or not. I mean, these all have structural changes to the environment. And what I found was, because there's so limited amount of past history, knowledgeable history, the only thing you can really do is like our original loggers. You can take the redwoods and the bristletone pine trees and look at the years, how old they are, and by looking at the years, by the rings and stuff, you can find where the fires were and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. This is all manageable stuff. But the bottom line is that we have no idea in any relative terms of what the climate was 500 years ago, let alone 1,000 years ago. I mean, we have an idea what it was like, and there's some topographical things that don't change. But as far as what the climate was like 1,000 years ago, people don't realize that in the early 1200 to 1250 AD, there was a mini ice age that covered the Arctic and North America and Northern Europe. I mean, a mini ice age where for 8 months of the year, it was covered in snow and ice for everything above, like, I think the 45th parallel or so. Yeah. That was all under ice and snow for most of the year. So, and that lasted for like 250 years before it thawed out. So when we talk about climate change and we're talking about the human nature and what human costs are to our nature, yeah, I mean, we can spoil things and we can actually show where we've done desecration to areas, but the only two things that actually make any real climate change affected globally speaking, and not just regionally speaking, but globally speaking, there's only two events. One, it's the sun is one, and the other one is volcanic eruptions. So those are the only two things that actually change the planet's climate: sun and volcanic eruptions are the only two things. Everything else is regional or local. And if you take a look at a town that was civilized for 200 years ago, and then eventually became a ghost town because everybody left, you know, that it only takes 50 to 60 years for nature to take over the town, and you won't even know there was a town there, except if you start digging, you might found some foundation or something like that. Just in a few hundred years, they're just wiped off the map, just ecologically and geologically speaking. So when we talk about climate change, you're right. It does affect how we manage forest fires and how we manage our resources, but it is not determinant on mankind that we determine how our climate actually changes.
We sure seem to have gotten off topic.
We did a little bit, yeah. But I do find some of the stuff actually overlaps, and I mean, like the Civil Air Patrol, they have aerial surveillance, so you have topography. So your topography generally doesn't change unless, of course, there's some mining going on, or there's, you know, like strip mining or things like that. And what that really does is it gives the C.A.P. I'm just extrapolating, but I'm thinking that gives them a marker, so when they're flying in an area, they know exactly where they're at because they know what the scars on their area is. Right? Is that right?
In a way.
I mean, you're going to still...
As pilots, we have different ways to navigate.
You have tactical...
100 years ago, navigation was look at a map, look out the window, and that was called pilotage. And then we learned that, you know, speed equals distance divided by time. You calculate the wind, speed, and direction, how fast your airplane will go, and you draw a line on a map, you measure it with your compass, and then you determine how long it's going to take you to go from point A to point B. You fly a heading, you look out the window at that appointed time, you're probably over your target. And then we came up with more electronic navigation systems, VHF, OmniRange, LORAN, and several others. And now we have GPS satellite navigation. Yeah. And boy, do we use GPS satellite navigation. And it's a whole new science for map making. We use it in wildland fire. We use it in municipal fire. We use it in city planning. We use it for demographic studies. We do it for study of climate change. We use it for navigation, and that's Geographic Information Systems, or GIS. And using those GIS mapping tools specific to the Civil Air Patrol, we can go out, like we said, the support of disasters and things like that. And what we'll do is collect data of a fire or data from a flood or an earthquake or other things like that. Everything is geo-referenced because even our cameras, our handheld cameras, have a GPS mounted to it. And then you get metadata that goes with that. It tells you what your altitude is, what your airspeed is, what your heading is, what your GPS location is.
Does all the work for you.
It does. Well, could you imagine writing it all by hand? And a handheld GPS, oh my gosh. So that is one of the ways that we can now collect data, and they can literally make maps and study where are areas of the greatest amount of inundation from a flood, where was the worst damage, where are populations, where are they moving to, where do they need to go in and do recovery work. And we collect a lot of that data through air reconnaissance to allow such as FEMA to be able to recover from said disasters. So it's a lot of fun, but it's a really important job that we do.
I imagine it's very important because it's historical as well as operational data that you're using on a real-time basis. Right?
One of the things that's almost putting us out of a job when it comes to the search and rescue aspect is that long ago when an airplane went down, we used to have to go out, well, we got an approximate idea where the airplane went down, and we'll go out and we'll do a search, grid search or a point search, and creeping line search. There's a whole variety of different search patterns we can do. And we put a pilot in the left seat, an observer in the right seat, but doesn't observe much because that person is working the radios and helping with the maps and everything else. So we have one or two people in the back seat called scanners. They look out the window and scan for targets. And so they do a lot of the workload to help support a search mission. And we would go out and do a search, and then they came up with emergency locator transmitters on VHF, and we have an antenna mounted in the aircraft that will pick up that signal and literally point directions, called a Becker. And we'll go out, and then we have some techniques like wing null and a couple of other things that we can use to search for that missing beacon. Well, now, within the last, 10, 15 years, they've said that all aircraft will use the new 406 megahertz ELT, and that goes directly to a satellite. I had a hard landing in my airplane once. I wonder if my bad landing is thinking about me right now, too, because I think about it all the time. But I kind of whomped it on the runway a little hard, and there's a switch inside the ELT in my airplane, and it set it off, and within 5 minutes flat. This is Airman so-and-so from the Air Force Rescue Coordination Center in Tallahassee, Florida. Is this 2174 Whiskey? Yeah. Are you William Munns? Yeah. We have an activated ELT. Oops. I had to reach in the aircraft and reset my ELT. It is that good. But sometimes an aircraft will go down where that thing doesn't work, or it's down in a steep canyon or something and we can't pick it up. So then we have to do an aerial search, and then ground teams will go final locate. And then we have equipment that we can do a search with handheld locators and receivers to go do that search. So the other thing that we've discovered is that we would also go out and look for missing hunters, missing hikers, missing RVers, you know, the ATVs and the motorcycles and all the other stuff.
Snow skiers.
Snow skiers. And they would go out and get lost. A friend of mine used to have a bunch of bumper stickers that said, support your local search and rescue, get lost.
Little pun words.
Yeah. A lot of these people nowadays, they buy what's called a personal locator beacon, or PLB. Going down to the local Cabela's has got them.
Shields.
Sporting Goods, Shields, REI, places like that. And you can go to these stores, and for $100 you buy one of these little beacons, and then you pay a $10 a month fee, and you can literally send text messages on it. But it tracks your location with a GPS unit and transmits to a satellite, and a spouse or a family member or friends at home can pull it up on their computer and know exactly where you're at as you're cruising. And you can even send messages. So here they are on an ATV. The ATV breaks down. They're in the middle of nowhere. They push the button on this thing, and it says, help, and we go out and find them. But because it's so well located with the GPS signal, that half the time the sheriff will get there before we can even launch an aircraft. And we have a 2-hour window to get the aircraft in the air most of the time. And so modern technology is making it that much easier to find missing persons out in the woods. So we are changing some of what we do as our mission for emergency services in the Civil Air Patrol. We're still using our aircraft, but we are shifting our focus from strictly the search and rescue to what else can we use these resources for? You know, it's like you open up a store across the mall here and you sell one thing. And after a while, people kind of lose interest in it. So you diversify your product line or your service capabilities. What can you do for me? And that's what the Civil Air Patrol is doing, is we're evolving. And one of the things that we have found as part of our emergency services, coming back full circle here, is our Operation Pulse Lift and the blood drive. And it is phenomenally successful. We've already collected in just the last few years well over 500,000 units of blood. And then we've also had people that donated not just whole blood, but plasma, as you pointed out earlier. Some people donate red blood cells. I tried that once, and I felt like sick for 3 days. And other people go, oh, that was a piece of cake. And they make a donation, and they only have to do it half as often if they donate whole red blood cells. Mm-hmm. And I just donate whole blood. Just take it all. And it's a little bit easier. But it's one of those things that we have found that we can support the blood services organizations like here locally, Vitalant, other parts of the country, it's strictly Red Cross. Well, we have both here in Reno, and we are partnering with them to help support them in their blood drive activities. But for disaster recovery and support, we also work with the Red Cross under that national agreement that we have, and certain other organizations. We have representation at the Nevada Office of Emergency Management. I just did a presentation to the Northern Nevada Emergency Managers Association, which I used to be a very active part of, and advised them of this is what the Civil Air Patrol can do for you. And if you ever need us, give us a call. You can't beat $175 an hour to put an aircraft with a crew of 3 people up in the air and do work for you. So we have this ability to support our local community statewide and nationally in our services. And we have some members in some of our aircraft that will literally go elsewhere in the country. They were doing some Homeland Security work and Border Patrol and using people from around the West Coast, traveling to Texas and doing work down there with Homeland Security. We've sent people to Puerto Rico. We've sent people to Florida, with other Southeast States after a flood or an earthquake or a tornado or a hurricane or whatever, and provided post-disaster support and recovery, both air operations and ground personnel to help move supplies and things like that. Like I said, we've got 500 aircraft. We have over 1,000 vehicles. So we have the ability to transport supplies, personnel, things like that. And we can do the aerial work, such as the recon, aerial photography, radio networking, things like that. So we're diversifying and expanding the things that we can do. One of the things we even do, we used to do it more active, was drug interdiction. We, under the Posse Comitatus Act, are not allowed to do law enforcement. That's against the rules. However, if we were to take a law enforcement person for an aircraft ride and do a little bit of recon, and we happen to be looking out the window and they spot a pot grow or an illegal drug lab or something like that, they make note of it, and then we land, and then they go bust them. Well, now that pot's legal in most places, including Nevada, we don't go look for pot grows anymore, but there are still illegal drug labs out there that we can go search for. So on occasion, we support local law enforcement agencies by doing recon flights for that kind of a search type mission. And we're looking at getting back into the green flag with the drones down at Creech and Nellis Air Force bases and things like that. So we're still a very viable and active volunteer force that provides an amazing resource to local communities and the nation. And it's been a lot of fun.
Well, it's a really kind of an evolving. What was important in the 20th century has evolved considerably different in the 20th.
Well, the Civil Air Patrol started in 1941 by flying little lightweight airplanes doing submarine patrols. They discovered and found over 175 submarines that were trying to either surveil or attack east and west coast. And they're flying offshore looking for submarines and spotted them. There were even some folks that were strapping bombs onto their little light airplanes and bombing ships that were enemy submarines off the coasts. And so there 58 Civil Air Patrol members died during World War II, and they finally have been honored. But all civilians, all volunteers. After World War II was over, they said, we have this entire force of all these people, these volunteers and all these aircraft. What do we do with them now? And that's when Title 38 came along and said, here's your three things we want you to do. Under the auspices of the Air Force, we want you to do search and rescue and disaster support, emergency services. We want you to do aerospace education and support the public and teachers and educators, because we need scientists, we need mathematicians, we need aircraft mechanics, we need pilots, we need engineers. And so we support that educational process. And then the third thing that we do is, it's a recruiting tool for the armed services by having our cadet program, but it's also encouraging them to become leaders and serve in their community and become more engaged in that aerospace career fields. And I'm surprised it's only 18% nationally of our cadets becoming enlisted into various military branches. I would like to see it be more.
What's the percentage here in Nevada?
Roughly the same as far as I know.
It hasn't changed much.
No. So the national numbers pretty much reflect what we got going on here.
Okay.
But we do have quite a few people who are motivated. We have one young man in our squadron right here in Reno who is about to go to the Air Force Academy. He was actually accepted to Annapolis, West Point, and the Air Force Academy, and he's going to the U.S. Air Force Academy. So we're pretty proud of Gavin.
Nice.
Yeah. We had one down in Las Vegas area that did the same thing. That's a pretty ongoing thing. We get quite a few people that really excel in the cadet program, and it's a 16-step process for promotions at the cadet ranks. And they have to go through minimal physical fitness testing, written tests for their leadership. They do lectures on leadership and character development. We do a lot of activities for the aerospace education component internally with the cadets. And they very often go on to STEM-related career fields. But we also see a significant number of them that do go into military career fields as well. And that's always nice to see.
Well, it's as we're talking as we speak right now, we've got flight to the moon for the first time in
Artemis 2.
in 54 years. And one of the things that NASA is saying is that to get Artemis 3 and Artemis 4, they need more engineers. They need more aerospace personnel in all different curriculum throughout, not just the rocketry and not just the propulsion systems, but the entire process. So all those people from 30, 40 years ago who are now retired are gone. They all need to be replaced.
Yep. And same thing occurs just in aviation in general. We're looking at a shortage of about 10,000 pilots per year for at least the next 10 years, according to the flying magazines I read, for airline pilots, corporate pilots, crop dusters, bush pilots, commercial pilots of all kinds. We're looking at a severe pilot shortage, and opportunities to fly as a career is a big deal right now. And flight schools are going nuts trying to train people to go into aviation-related fields. It used to be the only way you could get your foot in the door was enlist in the military, become a military pilot, serve your time, and then go out and get a civilian
because
job.
they had a big recruiting availability every 20 years. When the commercial pilots retired, a whole new crop needed to be filled, and so they just emptied the Marines, the Navy, and the Air Force. All those pilots, they did their gates, they did their 10 years or 8 years, and then they got out. And
as little as 6. And it's disappointing because the private sector pays a lot better than the military. And a lot of established pilots within the military services, and I'm talking all branches. If you're a pilot in one of the military services, not just the fighter jocks, but the transport pilots, the people flying the commuter aircraft for the dignitaries, whatever, the Warthog pilots, people like that, the helicopter pilots, they are finding that they can make more money leaving military service and going into the private sector, which is now leaving a vacuum of qualified military pilots. And we need to be improving recruiting and getting more people there, which is one of the things we do in Civil Air Patrol, is to try and get our cadets interested in aviation to want to learn, get into flying, and to enlist in military services so that we can have an adequately trained staff of personnel in our military services. And then they can go on later on to the private sector.
Well, absolutely. And the one thing I think we also need to talk about is advanced education for individuals going from high school into universities that do aeronautical engineering, aeronautical training, pilot training, that kind of aviation that you're talking about, because it hasn't been really recruited in our major universities for a long time. And it's the deficit is now caught up with the country.
Yes. And that's one of the reasons why the focus on aviation, aerospace, STEM education is a big deal. And this is what we were tasked to do by Congress under Title 38, I think it was. Title 10 said you guys exist. Title 38 says here's what we want you to do and why we have that federal funding from the Air Force and that kind of thing. So we take it very seriously and we try to fulfill those missions.
Well, it's been very educational, Sandy. I really appreciate what you've given us on Civil Air Patrol and given us a little bit of rounding of what's happening today and what's going on in the future, especially the educational portion for our young people. That's very informative to our listeners, and that will probably perk up a few ears, and we might get some more recruits just by putting the information out there that they obviously wouldn't normally have access to. And unfortunately, our media doesn't, it's not one of the glamour things that they want to talk about, but it's important for our society in general and for our military specifically. So I want to say thank you so much. We appreciate you coming on, and we'd love to have you again.
If I could just make one final plug.
Absolutely.
The blood drive, Operation Pulse Lift. We're always looking for blood donors. April 12th, 10 a.m. through 1:30 p.m., 890 Vassar Street. And if you're interested in aviation, working with cadets, aerospace education, if you want more information as an educator, how we can support you in your classroom, come meet us, come talk to us, and we can help you out. And we're always looking for new members.
Got a phone number?
My number is 775-2 224-3473. It's easy to remember. 2 plus 2 is 4. That's like calculus for a fireman. And 3473 spells fire. 224-FIRE. That's an easy one to remember.
There you go.
And I will be happy to provide further information for joining the Civil Air Patrol.
Thank you so much, Sandy. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
you having you.
Thank you very much, Troop, for listening to another podcast episode of Military Matters. Until next time, have a good furlough. And never forget, never surrender, and always be faithful. Dismissed!